Welcome to From Stuck to Scaled Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, your guide to navigating growth, transformation, and success in today's ever-changing business landscape. Each week, we'll dive into proven strategies, real-world case studies, and actionable insights designed to help small and mid-sized business owners scale smarter, lead stronger, and grow faster. Let's get you unstuck and on the path to sustainable, scalable success. Now your host, Julio Gonzalez.
Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects so many of us as we navigate the challenges of entrepreneurship, mastering our time. In this episode, we'll explore the delicate balance between achieving results and finding peace amidst the chaos. The pressure to do more can often leave us overwhelmed, but what if there's a way to approach our time with a new mental model? Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Andrew Hartman, a seasoned executive with 15 years of experience in building high-performance teams and leading organizations through complexity. Despite his successes, Andrew faced significant burnout while navigating the pressures of leadership, prompting him to seek a more effective approach to managing time and stress. Determined to make a change, Andrew crafted his own framework, Time Boss, which has transformed into a powerful coaching methodology embraced by leaders and companies worldwide. Today, he'll share insights into his journey from overwhelm to empowerment, revealing practical strategies for how we can all master our time to achieve both results and a sense of peace. Get ready to rethink your relationship with time. And let's welcome Andrew to the show. Andrew, welcome to From Stuck to Scale.
Hi, Julio. Great to see you this morning. Glad to be here.
Great to have you. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your business.
Yeah. So Andrew Hartman, I'm the founder of Time Boss. We are focused on helping growing companies whose teams are starting to feel stretched or a bit overwhelmed by the demands of their role. We give leaders a simple operating system for how they plan, how they prioritize, how they execute, so that they can keep up with the demands of their role. And really, we're focused on preventing them from burning out. Overwhelm and burnout is a cancer in our society at this point. It plagues knowledge workers, and we're focused on helping them take that next step.
And it sounds like Time Boss was born from a personal journey. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was in my mid-20s, had great education, great family growing up, thought I was equipped with everything I needed, found myself in a role where I had more to do than time to do it. And I suddenly realized no one had ever taught me how to manage time. You know, most knowledge workers exist in an environment where they've got more to do than time to do it. We don't have the luxury of at 5 o'clock, the whistle blows and we go home and that's it. You know, especially as business owners, we don't have that luxury. And I went into grind mode. I just got to keep working mode. And I never stopped working. I was either working or I was thinking about work, and it had such a massive impact on me. First came from my relationships. I wasn't present with my family. You know, I'd be physically at home trying to, play trains with my son or something in the playroom. And in the back of my mind, just thinking about all the work I have to get done as soon as they go to bed, staying up late, not going to bed at the same time as my wife, emotionally absent on the weekends, all those type of things. So it came from my relationships. It came from my health. As I would feel that overwhelm, it would manifest as stress, which a lot of us feel. And I would get these hot flashes, and I could literally feel it in my senses cooking. And one morning I woke up and couldn't smell the coffee, hugged my kids, couldn't smell the shampoo in their hair. And
Wow.
I had fully lost my sense of smell. This is a decade before COVID. I am not patient zero. It was, but it was, stress is health-related stress issues are a yellow flashing light that something needs to change. I was with a group of 30 CEOs last week doing a Time Boss workshop. And one of the individuals raised his hand and he said, I had unending irritable bowel syndrome until I came to terms with my relationship with stress. It's just yellow flashing lights. So I knew it was because of stress. I knew that was why I had lost my sense of smell. I was very aware of it, but I didn't change. And so it hit my relationships, hit my health, and finally it came from my results. I was the COO of early stage venture-backed startup companies. We had a massive product we were trying to push out the door. We were on a horrendous timeline that I had chosen, that I had agreed to. I kept telling myself, we just got to get past this project. We just got to get past this project, as if I would be a different person, after we shipped that project. And we shipped it on a Monday. And on that Thursday, the client came back with a large change order, and my brain just broke, just fully burnt out. And I said, no more. Put everything at risk, put my family at risk. I was the sole provider, put my team at risk, put the company at risk, our investors at risk, our customers at risk. And it really was all my choice. It was, I cared so deeply about doing great work. I cared about my contribution, and I allowed it to get out of control, saying yes to way more than I could handle. So rock bottom for me. But I didn't want to get out of the game. A lot of people, they burn out like that, and they like quit, or they go sit on a beach or whatever. They try to recover. And gratefully, I had a good team that was very helpful in the process. I had an incredible CEO I was working for. And I just said to myself, like, man, I have got to figure out a way to get the results that I want, but I need to make stress and fear and anxiety a boundary condition that I need to operate. How can I figure out how to operate without, and when we talk about stress, we're talking about extreme stress. Stress is actually a positive thing. There's a concept called eustress that allows us to lock in and do incredible work. That's the stress that we want. That really helps us focus. When it goes over to the other side of overwhelm, to distress, it starts impacting our work, our health, our relationships. We can share a little bit about results later, but anyways, I hit a wall. I said, I've got to solve this problem, get the results that I want without that overwhelm. And frankly, Julio, at the time, it sounds kind of naive, even in retrospect. I didn't even know if it was possible, but I knew how to build product. I was a startup guy. So I made myself the customer, and I just started building to see if it was possible. And I wasn't trying to create this thing called a time boss framework. I just was trying to get my family back, get my health back.
Solve a problem for yourself.
Yeah, for myself. And so I read every book you've probably ever heard of on time management. I ran weekly tests. I just made myself the customer, like I said, 100 iterations to figure out, could this happen? And I did it. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but I did it. I found myself waking up on a Monday, all in, heart connected, getting incredible results, able to close my laptop, shut the door at the end of the day, go home and be present with my family, getting dramatically better results than I had previous, just because when you reduce your stress, you have so much more mental faculties available to you to make great impact happen. And that was the origin story. I forced my team to do it because I told them they weren't going to mess this up. And I wasn't sure how they would receive it. They received it really well. It worked incredibly well for them. Leaders from other companies started asking me to coach and train them on it. We started installing it at the companies I was at and at other companies where those leaders were at. And there just was this realization of, I think we've stumbled upon something about how time works and how our brain works, and how we're intended to operate in this world of knowledge work that is absolutely infinite. We could work every single moment of every single day. And I think Time Boss is simply a way to think about that and approach that allows people to get incredible results from a place of peace and not stress.
I used to say that I knew for a fact that I was going to have a heart attack by the age of 35.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And luckily, had some good people, come into my life and made adjustments, and I'm way past 35 without the heart attack. But I've always been a W-2 employee. I became an independent just a couple of years ago, but I always had a side business. And as that solopreneur, one time we're waiting we rented a boat on Lake Powell.
Okay.
So the family's there waiting. I'm on a conference call because I couldn't delegate to anybody. And it's like, why am I, on vacation, impacting my family without, being able to have fun? Am I going to find myself out in the middle of the lake on another call? It was just that level of craziness. And like I said, there were a couple of people that came into my life that helped me make those adjustments. But I wish I had, better tools in place. And like you, I read all the books, but it never quite sunk in. So tell us a little bit more about Time Boss and how you get people to really, make it part of their ethos.
Yeah, absolutely. So the big idea, foundational concept that I believe in, and I think you were saying this, Julio, and with what you just described, is I had to find first a sustainable pace, because I was operating at an unsustainable pace. And then what came to me, I was a COO in those early stage software companies. So I was a systems builder. I knew how to state an outcome and then build a system to get it. What I realized what I wanted is I wanted my highest sustainable pace. I wanted to figure out what is the maximum impact that I can have in a way that I can sustain, operating from that place of peace, freedom, and clarity, not stress, fear, and anxiety. And so that was the big idea that we're after. And what I found, a really powerful idea that I came to in that process, was time is a very arbitrary number. You think about the 40-hour work week, like that was instituted by the government 100 years ago. And we've just kind of run with it, but it has no bearing on impact. It actually has no bearing on burnout. The science of burnout is fascinating. It's not correlated to the number of hours you work. It's correlated to, do I choose this? Do I have agency, and am I choosing it? And am I living in harmony with the stakeholders in my life? Does this work for my wife, my kids, my boss, my partners, my investors, my team, whoever? And if you can solve for those two things, you can actually operate at a very high pace people don't realize. So what I found in that then, since time is arbitrary, I realized that time is such a powerful constraint. And for each of us, our pace is a little bit different. Some of us can do 60, 70 hours and it's no thing. Some of us hit 40 and we're like, man, I'm maxing my capacity. And so I encourage people to ask a very profound question, which is, how much of your life do you want to give to work? And I'll ask this in workshops where people don't know me. And you will just see people lean back, and you see their eyes glaze over, because they realize that they have never actually asked that question in their life, but they are actually implicitly answering that question all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for people that are overwhelmed, they often are answering the question with every single second of every single day, as if for them to be successful, that is what's required. It's actually a phenomenally irrational thought that every single second of the waking hours that I can give are exactly what my job needs for me to be successful. So what I realized is, if we can choose that, for me with Time Boss, I choose 50 hours a week. That is my constraint. And what that does is it drives my creativity within those 50 hours, because what I'm trying to hold steady are two things. One is my peace, freedom, and clarity. But the other thing I'm trying to hold steady is my impact, my results that I want. And so if I constrain my time, that constraint drives my decisions around, okay, how am I going to solve this problem with the time that I have? And that move for knowledge workers is so critical because, as I said, not as I said, as we're all aware, knowledge work is infinite. It will never stop. There will always be more problems. There is no factory room floor that we get to leave behind at 5 p.m. And so we have to make the decision of how much life we're going to give to work. And then we just solve that equation. These are the results I'm responsible for. I have this many hours. What do I need to make happen? You said, Julio, you realized when you're making that call on Lake Powell, you weren't delegating. Like delegating, but especially for senior leaders, becomes the most obvious next step if you constrain your time. I must give away as much as I can to my team, both for us to be able to operate within these constraints I've created, but also for me to simply develop my people so that I don't have to be the one that's continually solving all the problems. We short circuit systems when we just allow ourselves to give all the time in the world to work. It's not the way it was intended. It's not the way our brain was designed. We could certainly talk more about that. But that's really where we start, is that hard constraint on how much of my life I want to give to work.
That's a great analogy, because we are giving so much of our lives. You mentioned earlier caring.
Yep.
There's, I've always said, because, I care so much. How much of it is really caring versus saying, caring to justify the level of effort, right?
Yeah. I think what's going on, and this was true for me, Julio, so I speak for myself in this process, is we care deeply. But I think if you peel back that layer, one more layer deeply, I think we all just want to be important. And I think we all want to be valuable, and we want to be the linchpin. And so sometimes we'll just say yes because we don't want to be a person that says no. And we want to be the person that people can rely on. And we think if we say no, that we're going to get passed over. If we talk about being overwhelmed, we're going to stop getting opportunities. And so we actually get deep identity wrapped up into work. And that drives our behavior. It causes us to violate what we might say our values are. It was causing me to violate my values of being a present father, because I wanted to be valuable. I wanted to be the guy in that environment. And what I encourage, and this is often where we get, especially with senior leaders in organizations, this is often where we get Julios. There's just a lot of identity wrapped up in that. And really what it requires is just a sober moment to ask people, what is the life that you want to choose? Is the life that you want to choose the one where you are beholden to constantly saying yes, losing your family, losing your health, ultimately losing your impact just so you can feel important? Is that what you want? And in sober moments, that's not what people say. And if you have a reflective moment, that's not what people say. And this is true of anything, right? We make powerful decisions in sober moments. So I just simply try to draw people into those sober moments. And then when they say, no, that's not what I want. I want this impact, but I also want my family. I want my health. I want these things. That's when we begin to architect our calendar differently. If we can have those sober moments that really reflect what we actually want, and then get our calendar to align to our actual goals and values.
Yeah, one of the or what I do, in my business is help build those systems so that founders and business owners can start looking at their calendars, right? But what tends to happen is it's my business. I have to be there. I have to do it. And there's that component you mentioned, delegation. If you don't have the structures in your business, if your business isn't repeatable, you can't hire effectively, you can't delegate effectively, because you use the term linchpin, you are the linchpin. And you do not have a business when the world revolves around you. You're an
Right.
employee,
Right.
Possibly in a business that you own, but you're an employee. Your business isn't saleable, your business isn't scalable. There's so many issues. So, where I work on the business, the operation, you're working on that leader to become more effective, by managing their time. So,
Right.
what are some of those? I don't want to call them tricks, because they're
Sure.
not necessarily tricks, but tools
Yeah.
that get leaders to focus on in order to more effectively use their time.
Yeah. So the science of productivity, of impact, is really about presence. Is, can I be fully present in this moment to the thing that's in front of me? So right now, you and I, Julio, on this call, like this call is effective because you and I are fully focused on each other. We're not doing other work. We're not, we don't have our email up on the screen. We're not distracted. We're fully present. And the challenge of presence is that the average leader is treating their brain like a storage device. Like, it was the brain, whether you think it was created or designed, it doesn't matter. The evidence is clear that it is a presence device. It is intended to be fully present to one thing and to make decisions about whatever's coming at them. If you think about an assembly line, and as an assembly line comes by, I, as a worker, make a decision about the thing in front of me. I do the work I need to do. That thing moves on and I come to the next one. This is how our brain was designed. In knowledge work, as we've established, it's infinite. So it makes the world just catch on fire around us. And it makes us feel like, I need to either get out of this room, I need to run, or I need to put the fire out. So we feel that need to constantly work. To counter that, we need tools that we trust. We need ways to outsource all these things that are occupying space in our brain into some very specific tools. And there's really just 3 tools that I encourage people to work off of. One is what I call a backlog. And that term is used in a lot of environments, but it's really just the place that is going to hold all the work that I need to do in the future. And what people often do is they have backlogs all over the place. It's Post-it notes, to-do lists, journals, the whiteboard in the office, the whiteboard at home that they bought during COVID, the browser tabs that they never close. We just spread ourselves all over the place. And we do that for a very rational reason, because we feel that, okay, I'm not going to remember all this stuff. We start writing things down. But when we spread our context everywhere, we can no longer answer the question, what is the most important thing and what should I do next? And so what we do when we can't answer those questions, our brain is desperate to make progress. We will do the easy stuff, or we will put out the fires, because 1, our brain wants to make progress. That's why we do easy stuff. 2, no one's going to blame us for putting out fires. The backlog is the answer to that. It is simply collecting the work to be done into a single place where it's all out in front of me. Now, for a lot of people, when they do that, I recommend simple tools. Like, if you're in the Microsoft environment, Microsoft To Do is brilliant at this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Google Tasks is brilliant at this. Asana, Apple Reminders. There's so many ways you can do this. The tool does not matter. Number 1 question I get asked is which tool I should use. And my number 1 answer is whatever thing you're already using. What people need is a philosophy about time, a way to think about time. They don't need a better tool. So You get it all in one place. And what that allows you to do is all kinds of things. One is I can now make sense of what is the work that's to be done, that I feel compelled to do. I can prioritize in that context. I can break down the work in that context. And Time Boss, once we get past the tools, is a series of habits to plan out your week and close down your day. And so we have a very specific agenda that we work through with the backlog to help people figure out, what should I actually work on this week that's aligned to my goals and values? How should I get that work done? What's the way I'm actually going to get that work done? And then most importantly, in my opinion, what do I do with all the stuff that doesn't fit that I feel guilty about? And we work through that in the process. So backlog is one. The other is people's calendar. I'm a massive believer that the best to-do list in the world is your calendar. Everything on your to-do list demands one simple resource for you to make it happen, and that's time. And our calendar is our expression of our time. And so we teach people how to use their calendar. A lot of people have calendar blocked, and they often give up calendar blocking because they block every single second of the day and it didn't go that way, and they think calendar block doesn't work. Well, they weren't actually calendar blocking. They were hoping. They were treating hope as a strategy as it related to their calendar. So we teach people how to calendar block very realistically. One of the key components of that is one or two things, really. One is being very specific on your calendar blocks about what you're trying to achieve. A lot of people will calendar time for focus time, and then they show up into focus time and they check their email because they don't know what to do. They haven't really thought through, how am I going to use that time? And so I encourage people to get very specific, taking items out of that backlog. And if you are trying to ask a question like, man, I know I need to be better about AI, what should I do about it? Like, that's the thought that coalesces in your head, but you have to take that to a next step of, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours on Twitter and see what the best practices are for my industry. And I'm going to spend 1 hour just playing with it in my environment and see what I could come up with. We've got to give ourselves clear definitions of done, discrete tasks that we understand, that we can wrap our head around, that fit really well on our calendar, and then we can attack those items to make them happen. The other thing I encourage people to do with their calendar is they have to have buffer. In Time Boss, we call this whirlwind. And it's literally your budget for the chaos. It's your budget for the unknown. And I recommend people have 10 to 40% of their day based off research and based off my own experience. And really what you're saying there is, I don't know how I'm going to get interrupted with urgent and important items, but I know I'm going to get interrupted. So I'm simply going to budget some time into my week to deal with that. So calendars, those are really critical. Again, specific calendar blocks, add buffer, and that's how you work our calendar. And then the third tool, it's a very simple tool. I call it the parking lot. And the parking lot is, if you've ever run a high functioning meeting, you've had a parking lot where, you're meeting and you're trying to do talk about the marketing plan for 2026. And someone's like, man, I really feel like our staffing plan is not working right now. And you might say, Julio, thank you so much for that point. I'm going to set that in the parking lot so we can stay focused on our marketing plan, and we'll come back to that later. That's all we do with a parking lot for ourselves. So our brain is a squirrel chaser. Even right now, while you and I are meeting, Julio, something could come up in my head that I think is really important. I would write that down in my parking lot, knowing I have time. I haven't scheduled out my entire day. I have time set aside later in the day for those unpredictable things where I can process those items in my parking lot. And when we operate with that, it allows us to become fully present to the thing in front of us, because we're no longer chasing squirrels wandering off. We're parking those items so we can stay present to the things that are actually aligned to our goals and values. It's literally that simple. I wish it was more complicated. It's that simple, which makes it very easy to learn. And as I mentioned, there's some habits later we can certainly talk about if you like. But when people operate with those simple tools, when they align their calendar to their goals and values, when they deal with the items that don't fit so that those don't become these, emotional ghosts that just haunt us all week long, they see 95% of individuals that implement experience more peace, less overwhelm. It's just automatic. This is just the way our brain works. It allows us to become fully present to the thing in front of us. When people experience more peace, peace becomes the engine of progress. People see a 43% jump in productivity. They perceptively feel like they get 5 hours back in their week. Again, simply because when we operate cognitively overloaded, we have an experience of life that we don't want, stress, fear, and anxiety, and we just make dumber decisions at a very base level. We become much more effective when we experience more peace and we have that feeling of there is actually enough time. There's enough time for me to be present right now and just make great work happen. We just show up differently when that's the case.
You're listening to From Stuck to Scaled, and we're talking time management with Andrew Hartman. And I love that you brought out the squirrel mechanism, because I had a squirrel moment, and I wrote it down in my parking lot, because the frame on my podcast screen here has been driving me nuts. So I wrote it down so that I don't forget to do a quick update here, to just make it more appealing. But like you said, it's one of those things that if you don't put it in a parking lot, it just sits there and festers, and it's like, I know I'm going to forget, and that causes so much anxiety.
Yes.
When you're trying to juggle all of these things in your mind,
Yeah.
where if you do just keep that list and prioritize it and have the parking lot, it eliminates the clutter from your brain.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of different businesses that I'm working on, plus I've got my podcast, plus I do a lot of networking, and people ask me, how do you get everything done? And it's like, because I focus on what's most important at the time. Yes, my backlog's got 100 different things on it, but number 99 is one of those nice to do whenever I happen to get there. Not, oh my God, I have 99 things to do.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of people get stuck. I have 100 things on my to-do list. Yeah, but how many do you really need to do?
Yeah.
Are priority, or are life changers.
Yeah.
And that's how I manage my time. I focus on those things that are most important at the time. And yes, that means that in some cases, I'm working on things last minute because they weren't a priority, and maybe they became a priority now. But that's where the buffer time comes in. So I love that concept also.
Yeah, so cool.
How do you help, or and maybe this is not more directly, but what can you at least suggest for solopreneurs that don't have people to delegate to?
Yeah.
Because that's something that throughout my career I've used a number of tools. Because even working in a Fortune 75, I felt I was running my own business, right? So I had to operate in a certain framework. So how can you recommend to somebody that doesn't have somebody to delegate to manage themselves a little bit more effectively?
Yeah, it's really critical. So the name Time Boss comes from this concept that I am the boss of my future self. So I become a time boss when I plan. So our weekly planning meeting is literally time boss time. And then I am looking at the needs of my future self over the next 7 days and say, how do I set up that individual to be successful? So solopreneurs are actually in a perfect position for this. And what I would encourage the solopreneur to ask is, what does my future self need to be successful? So in some cases, they need focus. They need you to be working on the business, not in the business. And that is a struggle for solopreneurs. And the mental exercise I always encourage a solopreneur to consider is, are there ever any moments throughout the week where you sit in a room and your email is not open and your messages are not open and you are fully present and focused on one thing at a time? And they think about it and they're like, no, never. And I'm like, well, do you ever meet with a client? Or do you ever have a sales call? And they do. And they realize that in those meetings, they can be fully present to one thing because it's critical for their business. It's how they deliver business. It's how they create value, whatever. And so the mental model that I encourage solopreneurs to consider is, if you can do that in a meeting with another client, you can do that on your business. And so in a weekly planning meeting, you might establish I love what you just shared, Julio, of your backlog. You decide, okay, what are those critical items? What, the Pareto principle, what are the 20% of the tasks here that are going to make 80% of the difference? I would encourage the solopreneurs listening to, in a weekly planning meeting, identify 5 one-hour tasks that help you do that. Just get very discreet. Work with an AI if you need to. Ask an AI for ideas, but get 5 one-hour tasks and put those at the very start of your day. Before you check your email, before you check your messages, before the bullets start flying, and get fully present to knocking that item out. You're effectively delegating at that point to your future self to be successful against those items. And then the rest of the day, open yourself up to the chaos, let it ride, just check your email and have fun, whatever you want to do, right? But what you're doing is you're beginning to establish habits that you have times where you can be working on the business, where you're literally the senior leader of your organization, and you have other times where you are the doer, you're the person that has to make the value happen. That's one. The other thing I would encourage you to consider, any solopreneur on this call, is I would encourage you to make that powerful decision of how much of my life do I want to give to work? And because, again, it forces your creativity. For example, with Time Boss, our prices here 3 years into this business are significantly higher than they were when we started. We pivoted both on how we delivered our products, and we pivoted on who we focused on delivery to, in order for us to build a business that would allow me to work 50 hours a week. Because what mattered to me more than anything was I wanted to be successful and have impact in this business, but I also wanted to be successful with my wife and with my kids and with the ministries I lead at church and all those things that matter to me with my friends. So again, it might mean that you have some clients that shouldn't be your clients. It might mean that your prices need to increase. It might mean that you need to pivot on product or pivot on industry or who you target. But that may be what's required for you to take a next step here and for you to start getting the life that you want and the experience and the results that you want. Both of those can be true.
One of the things I think a lot of, particularly smaller business owners struggle with is, I'll just very broadly say, getting help.
Yeah.
Right? I ran into a quote, poor people buy things, rich people buy time.
Yes.
Right.
Powerful.
So I talk a lot to business owners about what do you need to outsource in order to buy yourself more time. And I get it. I may not have a ton of working cash available to hire a body, but I'm a fractional COO. You can hire me to help with operations. You can hire somebody to do some sales. You can hire call center agents offshore. I mean, there's so many opportunities now to bring in help at not ridiculous cost that can get you so much time back.
Right.
And I see too many business owners fighting that.
Yeah.
Again, because it's all about me. I have to be there and I have to be the one doing. So I see that as a huge challenge that people just aren't thinking broadly enough that they could really positively impact their lives if they just looked at outsourcing one item.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think to your point, Julio, poor people buy things, rich people buy time. I think they also buy energy. And what we don't realize is that our brain is this cell phone battery we charge every night, and it just depletes all day long. And it's really hard to get energy back without a nap or more sleep or what have you. And so every time we make even a little decision, it depletes some of that energy. So you think about checking your email or responding to customer requests or all these things, these transactional items that you're doing because you're a solopreneur and there's no one else to do it. But if you could offset to someone else, a virtual assistant, to your point, virtual assistants people don't realize how cheap they are. I mean, it's unbelievable the value that you can get, particularly in an offshore VA who is helping you, again, just eliminate little decisions throughout the day. They're helping you triage your inbox so you only see the emails that are critical for you to respond to. They help handling your calendaring so you don't have to spend any mental energy on back and forth on calendaring, even little things like that. And VAs can do so much more than that. But even those things, I think solopreneurs or anyone listening that feels overwhelmed with what's coming at them, I would look to even eliminate those type of activities as a way to get back some mental energy for you to do incredible work, let alone, like you were saying, Julio, I mean, fractional COO sales. We have a what's the term I'm looking for? A menagerie of contractors that help us in so many different ways at Time Boss. Could I do them? Probably. I probably wouldn't do them as well as the team members that we have, but I am trying to conserve energy for the things that are going to create the most value for Time Boss and help us to continually grow this business.
Yeah, time is our currency. Time is, in essence, cash.
It's so funny you say that, Julio. I literally thought earlier, I can't believe I didn't say this out loud, but in Time Boss, we have a statement that time is cash, not credit. And most people actually, everyone understands time as currency, I think implicitly, because they spend time on things, but they don't realize that they're treating it like a credit card, where they are saying yes without any concept of, do I have the time to actually fulfill on this need? And it's no difference than swiping a credit card and not knowing if you have the cash. And every business owner on this call is like, bro, we get points. Yes, we get points. Points are great. But if we are only ever swiping the card, eventually we are only making payments on interest, and it
Yeah.
halts us financially. And the same is true with our time. If we just say yes to thing after thing after thing without any concept of, do we actually have the time to fulfill on that? We are eventually just keeping our head above water, pulled in a million directions, and it halts us strategically. We stop moving forward because we're just putting out fires. And so to your point, Julio, I think every business owner, when we make that decision, I'm going to work 50 hours a week or 80 hours a week or 40 hours a week, whatever it is, that is your cash budget. And you are now simply allocating in the very same way. If you had $1 million of capital to allocate to investments, you would be very judicious about how you direct those funds. And you wouldn't hallucinate and say, I have $1.5 million. You don't. You only have $1 million. The same is true with time. You only have 40 hours or 80 hours or whatever you choose that number to be. And your goal is then to creatively solve that equation. How can I get the results that I want with the experience of life that I want within this time frame? And let me attest to you, and let the hundreds of leaders, 40 plus teams that have implemented Time Boss attest to you, that it's absolutely possible to answer that question.
You mentioned your ministry earlier. One of the people that came into my life was somebody who was very spiritual. And the thing that she would tell me all the time, and I would fight her on it, and now I use it all the time. You got to get these concepts out of here and bring them down to here, right? Because we know, it makes total sense, right? Allocate your time and, do all of these things and, atomic habits. We know all of these things, but until we can feel them, right, they're not really transformative to our lives. And that, even as a visual, bringing it down from your brain to your heart, I think works tremendously to get people to understand how important it is to not just read it, but to live all of these things that can really benefit us so much.
Yeah, it's well said, Julio. The encouragement I have people think through, Ben Hardy, Dr. Ben Hardy talks a lot about our future self. And I think if we can envision our future self, if I think about Andrew 5 years from now, and I can really think about that guy, and I can really think about what he needs and what I want from him, man, I want him to experience peace, freedom, and clarity. I want him to be so passionate about Time Boss. I want him to be all in on helping people solve their relationship with time. And if I really personify that dude, I will start making decisions today on his behalf, because I want him to be here and be successful, because he's coming. Like, whether I like it or not, that dude's going to, hopefully, God willing, that'll be here in 5 years. He's coming. Or shorten it, make it 6 months, to anyone listening, and just think what tools can I fashion for that individual with the choices that I make today? I think when we get so caught up in the present, and we make it through today and it wasn't that bad, I didn't die, so we just toss it over to the fence to us tomorrow, and they pick it up again and they keep running. I just think we got to spread out the time horizon that we're evaluating and think, if I had to live this day 100 days in a row, would I be a better person or a deteriorated person because of that? And I think those mental models are so powerful, to your point, Julio, to go from head to heart, for you to emotionally connect with, I must change. Future me needs me to make some powerful decisions today. I must own this and do something about it, even if it's hard. And that's frankly what keeps people from shifting. Even when people try to self-implement Time Boss, it's just the pain. It's like going to the gym on your own. It's hard. You're not going to lose 20 pounds at the gym today. You're going to lose 0.002 pounds and maybe gain a little bit of muscle. And you got to do that for 100 days in a row for you to see anything different. It's no different in changing our relationship with time. But in both of those scenarios, we are betting on our future self. We are making investments today incrementally for our future self, not necessarily for us today.
So Andrew, I'm not sure if you mentioned it or if I read that you've got a masterclass that you do with Time Boss. Tell us a little bit about that and how that works.
Yeah, so we have a free 75-minute masterclass. It's available on our website. It's also available on YouTube. And it walks through the entire Time Boss framework, start to finish. So in 75 minutes, you can see exactly how to set up the tools that we just talked about, how to run the weekly planning meeting to plan out your week, align to your goals and values, how to run a daily review meeting to shut down your day, stay committed to your plan, and also get that emotional separation from work to go home and rest and recover that is so elusive for knowledge workers. All that's available. I am a firm believer that should be free. I want to help as many people as we can with Time Boss. I said it earlier. I think overwhelm is just a cancer in our society. It's robbing us of our relationship, of our health, of our results, and it's absolutely solvable with simple systems. And so if you're a self-implementer, go watch the masterclass and run with it. If you watch the masterclass and you think, man, I need help, or I want this for my team, I don't have time, I don't want to do this on my own, certainly our team can help you, but the masterclass is designed to solve your problem, to give you the recipe. If you're a self-implementer, just go get it and run with it.
And Andrew, no one leaves the show without providing some, real hot tips that our listeners can implement today. So if nothing else, give me one or two tips that somebody can implement to really transform their time.
Yeah, we talked about a couple of them today. So people that transform their time, I think, do two things really well. One is they separate out focus time and reactive time. And so, I mentioned that concept of whirlwind. Anyone listening, my strong encouragement, even if it's just an hour, have an hour of the day that you call your focus time, and let the rest of the day be reactive time, where you react to the things that are coming at you. But you want to develop the discipline of being able to hide yourself to focus, for you to be the controller, or you decide where your attention goes. You take authority over your attention. That's one. And then the other thing I would encourage you is, within that hour or whatever time you decide to focus, I would get incredibly specific about what you're trying to achieve with that time. You want to give yourself a clear scoreboard where you're done. You can check it off at the end of that time, because your brain is desperate for progress. Think of it like running a marathon without mile markers. Your brain would go haywire because you wouldn't know how far along you are, how long you have to keep running. Those mile markers help us understand that we're at a good pace, that we're making good progress. You want to create mile markers for your future self with those clear definitions of done, specific tasks that you're doing in that focus time. Those two things, even those tiny little changes, could have a dramatic impact on your week this week.
I love that part of being very, very specific on your time blocking. That I think is something that will definitely help me, because I do have my time blocking and separately my tasks. So bringing those together, I think will help me tremendously.
It'd be very powerful for you, Julio.
Andrew, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, timeboss.us is our website. We've got a blog, all kinds of free resources, the masterclasses there. And then we're very active on LinkedIn, and would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's just a fun community. We have a large Time Boss community now, so a lot of people engaging. It's a lot of fun. So we'd love to connect with people there.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us today, Andrew. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of From Stuck to Scaled. I hope Andrew's insights on mastering time have inspired you to reshape your approach to productivity and find that delicate balance between achieving results and maintaining peace. Remember, treating your time like cash and making your calendar your to-do list can help be game changers. Don't forget to take a moment to reset and focus on what truly matters. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and share and leave us a review. Until next time, keep pushing forward and scaling your business with intention. Thanks again, Andrew. Take care.
Thanks, Julio.
You've been listening to From Stuck to Scaled, Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, produced by Opticution, LLC. For more information, tools, and resources, check out our website, www.opticution.com/podcast.